I'm Tommy Salmons. This is year zero. I invited my friend and colleague, I guess you would say, Pete Quinones back on the program. Pete is the host of Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast, and we wanted to get together and just discuss kind of our change of thinking, our strategies during the coronavirus epidemic. And we thought that the conversation would be one that would be thought provoking and interesting to all of you. So here is my interview with Pete Quinones.
And I am here with Pete Quinones from Free Man Beyond the Wall. What's up, brother?
Doing good, Tommy, man. How are you?
Man, I'm doing, man. Head above water.
It's about the best that anyone could be doing right about now. I mean, we could be doing better. People could be out there, taking advantage of things, and there's money to be made. But a lot of that might be gray market or even black market. But
frowned upon for sure. Well, and that's why I asked you here, man. And it's as this. Well, I can't even say this was what started my transitional thinking, but I think it was the straw that broke the camel's back in the way that I look at anarchism and the way I look at libertarianism in general, and just advocating for freedom. I've noticed that a lot of your posts that you're posting are also moving in the same direction as my line of thinking. And I have to give a lot of credit. I know you remember, I don't know if you remember, but I know you had shared one of my podcasts, I guess it was about a year ago, right after you had interviewed Per Byland. I think I'm saying that right. Is Per Byland or Per Byland?
Per Beeland, actually.
Beeland. Okay.
Yeah, I had him on for 3 episodes before. He didn't even correct me because he's too nice a guy. But then I heard Jeff Deist pronounce his name, and I'm like, oh, crap.
So it was, I guess it was after one of his episodes that he did with you that I started like thinking a little bit differently, and not about economics specifically, but about the market and about capitalism in general. And so I started going down the road with Center for Stateless Society that, Sheldon Richmond works with, and reading a lot of different, like panarchy.org, and I ran into Voltairine Declare thanks to Sherry Voluntary. So my mind had been transitioning. And then, as you're aware, a couple of months ago, you and I and Sal were, chatting back and forth about agorism and what books to read. And so that kind of got me shifted in a little bit of a different direction. And I've noticed that your, posting and the things you're talking about is moving along the same lines as me. So I wanted to just kind of talk about the progression, like where you're moving with your libertarianism as of now, what you're reading and things of that nature.
Well, I've always been an agorist. There are things that I don't talk about that I've done in the past that would definitely be black market. But, I've talked about the fact that, I worked under the table for years, worked for cash for years, sold bootleg DVDs out of the back of my car, and would flip guns, which was legal-ish in Georgia, get one cheap and turn around private sale. Private sales are, legal here, but, it's, they don't want to see you becoming a private dealer or something like that. And right. That could actually, that could happen. But I didn't realize the strategy behind it. And, Sal helped me a lot with that. And Sal kept at me, Konkin said that really you should only be going, if you're trying to recruit people into agorism, that you should really only go after like the really hardcore ANCAPs. And yeah, I guess Sal saw me as that. And, as somebody who's done agorism his whole life, basically, I remember growing up, the first nice set of hockey gloves I ever had fell off the back of a truck, as we say in New York. They were $65, $70 gloves, leather. And, we got them for $20. And, that's because, you know, a, the door on the back of a truck just opened up and it fell while it was driving or something like that. And so I was always open to it, but I never really embraced it and wanted to talk about it a lot. So listening to Pear, talking to Sal a lot, I've had dinner with Sal a couple times when I go up to New York. Mm-hmm. It always bothered me that the things I was talking about, the things I was reading, didn't have a strategy other than educate, educate, educate. And once I had read Konkin's An Agorist Primer 3 or 4 years ago. I understood it, but not really. Yeah, I knew what he was trying to say, but it was like, well, I read it again recently, and it was the purest laissez-faire capitalism, free market I've ever read. And then I got New Libertarian Manifesto, which is more extensive and talks a lot more about strategy and really gets into counter markets. And that really, really spoke to me. And then there's another book that Wally Conger put together for using some of Sam's work from the past about what's called agorist class theory. And it's based off of Marx's class theory, but it actually smashes it and destroys it. And it makes you, after you read it, you won't be shamed if you use the term wage slave anymore, because you will understand that agorism eliminates the wage slave. And, wage slave is just somebody who works for a wage, and then the government, the slave master, comes in and takes a portion of that money away from you. Yeah. And, a lot of times people will be like, well, I'm getting 30 to 40% of my income taken away. At what percentage do I stop being a slave? And that's what a lot of ANCAPs, a lot of libertarians use as an argument against taxation. Agorism answers that question, because you're not paying taxes, and you never will. Or you're going to do everything you can to avoid that.
Right.
So, yeah, I would say really An Agorist Primer is where I started. Went on to New Libertarian Manifesto, which is Konkin. And there's a version on Amazon, and you can get it on eBay, of New Libertarian Manifesto and Agorist Class Theory in it. And then I read, after I did New Libertarian Manifesto, and somebody did an audio version of it on eBay, on YouTube. There's an audio version of Agorist Primer on there, but it's missing a couple chapters for some reason that I can't figure out. And then I think Agorist Class Theory is like at the most 30 pages. And that just really solidified everything. And yeah, now I'm just full on, gray markets, black markets. I really think it's the only logical, I think it's the only strategy we have. I mean, I can do podcasts. I released episode number 411 of my podcast today. I mean, I have people all the time who contact me and say, hey, I became an anarchist. I became a libertarian because of your podcast and everything. Keep up the good work. But that really only goes so far. And I think history shows that people doing agorism, not knowing the term, not knowing that they were doing it, and not having any strategy for doing it, have taken down empires and been a part of taking down empires. So, once I got that realization in my head, and it solidified everything that I had been reading, I just decided to take a totally different, tact. But there's an external factor that really put me over the top, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, we can move into that direction, but just before we get there, um, what kept popping into my mind was this last I think it was the last interview you did with Sal. I try to keep up with all your podcasts, but you release them so fast. I fear I'm behind. I think I still need to listen to the last one you did with Vin Armani. I think that's the one I'm at right now.
That one it's very important.
And I'm stoked.
He just and just forewarned, his audio quality isn't good on it because he just moved, which is something that he talks about in there, which is very important because he talked about looking for some place to move in the world where he wouldn't be touched by all this. And he had just moved and he hadn't had a chance to unpack all his equipment and everything. So he was using computer audio. But what's funny is I thought it bothers me because that's just how I am. But nobody has complained about his audio because what he's talking about is so important and rich.
Yeah. And typically whenever you get into one of those podcasts that when somebody's talking about really important information, about 5 minutes in, you don't even notice that the audio is doing anything weird. But so your last conversation with Sal, he made a comment, man, and it was like, yes, that's what I've been trying to identify. I've been trying to put my finger on that. And he had said that ANCAPs and all other libertarians, maybe it wasn't on your podcast, maybe it was on one of his own podcasts, but he said ANCAPs and all other libertarians are by nature collectivists because they are trying to convince a majority of people to pursue liberty, whereas agorists are pursuing liberty on their own. And they're doing it themselves, and they're not depending on everybody else to join along. And the more people that join along, fine, that's great. But if not, I'm still going to live as free as I possibly can. And that really struck me. I was like, that's exactly what I've been trying to connect with. I've been trying to find the words to express that. And I think it's really important for people to understand that the evangelism, and this is how David Nolan put it, the evangelism of the Libertarian Party is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. If you want to evangelize and you want to educate, then okay, go for it. But the fact is, I don't want to wait for everybody else to jump on board with the ideas of liberty before I experience liberty in my life.
That's really important. It's basically what libertarianism is evangelicalism. It's just going out there and preaching a message. Well, as somebody who's spent time in church, people will tell you that doing and setting an example is more important than what your words are. And I think that's what agorism is you're not only talking about liberty, and you're talking about ways that an individual can become, free of the state and, really just drop off of the state's radar, but also that you're showing that it works, that it can be done. And, there's a lot to that. I mean, what you said though can make it sound as if you decide to become an agorist and now you become an agorist and that's it. And you don't worry about other people. But something else that, like if you read Conk and Sal talks about this, he talked about it on my podcast, but he had a great episode recently, WTF is agorism. And it's a great episode. Anybody should go read Sal's podcast is the Agora. And it's an insanely good episode. And so rich. I've listened to it a few times. What he talks about is freedom cells, where agorists most agorists like other agorists because they're entrepreneurs, they're doing for themselves, and also there is safety in numbers. So you can have these freedom cells. And he talked about like the Bitcoin community that's popped up in Miami. The Don't Comply crew in Texas he talked about. And he also talked about people in New Hampshire, not the Free State Project LLC, but the crypto community up there, the people that are operating outside of the system, and how getting together and how numbers will work and how it will influence people around you. One thing he does, one thing that Konkin, and Sal got this from Konkin as well, is you don't want to try to go somewhere and take over the government, because government's force, government's a violation of the zero aggression principle. So there's a big difference between people going to New Hampshire because the regulations on crypto, if you're starting a crypto community or a crypto business like Venramani did when he moved there, how there's no regulations and you can pretty much do what you want, and if you're operating crypto, you're not paying taxes, against going up there and trying to take over the government, which is not, it's one of the reasons why I've officially, and I'm done with the Libertarian Party. It's just, there's nothing for me there. And then I can go more into what I was gonna talk about, what really caused me to make this gigantic turn.
Okay, well, let's go there. Like, what happened? What made you turn there? Because, like I said, I think we turned the same corner within the same period of time, and I think you personally, I think you have a better, as far as you're more read up on it. I just kind of, it was just kind of, I noticed my attitude and my thought process shift. Whereas I've seen that it feels like you're a lot more read up on exactly what you're doing and more studied on exactly what you're doing than I am. You know what I'm saying? If that makes any sense. I'm moving a lot by instinct. It feels like to me, and my instinct just had me kind of turn this corner where I was like, "What the hell? I don't know about this."
Well, when this is over, I'll just send you a link to three free PDFs of really short books that you should read, and it'll get you up to speed. But it's this coronavirus thing. This thing, I immediately saw what was happening. I'm not saying that there's not a coronavirus out there. I'm not saying that it's not affecting certain people in a way that's causing them to lose their lives. I mean, I think that there's a lot of people who are dying positive of the coronavirus who aren't dying of the coronavirus, but I also know for a fact, I've talked to people who say, yes, I mean, this person didn't, this person was in poor health, but now their lungs are just basically shutting down or filling with fluid and shutting down. So I know that it's causing certain people problems, but more than anything, I'm not scared to get a virus. I've had many viruses, and I think I've already had this one. And I think I was pretty much just asymptomatic. I think I had a flu kind of taste in my mouth for about 10 days. And I was talking to somebody today, a professor at the Mises Institute, and he said that his son up in New York lost sense of smell for 10 days. And then it came back. And then he went and got tested and he came up, he has antibodies, but that was the only thing that happened to him. But he's 26 years old. So, but then you have 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds getting it and it's just killing them.
Right.
So I'm not saying that there's not a coronavirus out there, but what I am saying is what Rahm Emanuel said, never let a crisis go to waste. And the government is using this to institute a future tyranny that is going to make what happened after 9/11 just pale. It's going to pale in comparison. I mean, 9/11, what happened after? I was an adult when 9/11 happened. I remember everything. I remember, the Patriot Act. I remember the TSA. My first trip through the TSA, I remember thinking, wow, things have really changed. This is something completely different. This is using an invisible enemy to cause the population to after 9/11, people were like, all right, we're going to have to do this. There's an enemy out there that wants to kill us. So, the TSA is fine. Or you need to spy on me, whatever. People are asking for this. People are asking to be protected from the coronavirus. People are going on social media or what was the one I heard that somebody was jogging in, I think it was LA, or it was in like Washington, D.C. or something like that. And somebody just rolls down the window and screams at them and goes, "You're killing me, We have basically what this thing has done is it's changed the society forever, the culture forever. Asia people have been wearing masks there for decades.
Right.
And we're going to see that. That's not going away. That's not going away. I mean, from now on, you are going to see a lot of Americans adopting wearing a mask. And I don't know that the ones who choose to wear a mask everywhere, I don't know that it'll ever be that they'll look upon the people who aren't wearing a mask and not look at them with suspicion. Like Vin Armani says, it's like the Salem witch trials. Like, I think that person might be a witch, or I think that person walking around without a mask might want to try to kill me.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. And James Corbett has been using this term a lot lately on his podcast, and his podcasts are recommended. Panopticon. And what they're going to design, because China's already done this, and I've seen white papers coming out of think tanks in Washington talking about we just have to adopt the China model where everybody is tracked. If you haven't previously tested positive, you come within 6 feet of somebody, they'll track it on your phone. They'll find some way to track you, and you'll have to go to quarantine for 14 days.
Right.
And this will be just more adding on to the general public's adopting of more police tactics. What's funny is since this whole thing started, I really haven't seen the police out on the road a lot. I've talked about how I talked to a police officer in Tennessee, and he said that, basically what his department told them was don't get sick. So they're basically not going out there and policing. They're trying to stay off the road.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter anymore because they can just sit in the precinct and people can call them in. People can call in and say, "Hey, I saw this person walking with his family and no one's wearing masks." And they got within, 5 feet of another family who were wearing masks. And basically creating a snitch society, and combine that with a technocracy, which we've had for a while. I mean, with all the spying and everything with Snowden, what they used Snowden to release. And yeah, I mean, there's no political solution to this, to what's coming and what's being instituted right now. And I keep saying what's coming, but it's already here. There's no political solution to this. The LP doesn't have an answer for this. I mean, the LP has an answer they've hardly talked about what's going on. The Democrats and the Republicans are just fighting for power. The LP is not going to have any power. Education is educating people on liberty is, I mean, I hope there's people who are starting to understand exactly what's going on. But I don't know. And I mean, I know that I'm getting more downloads on my episodes. I don't know if that's Agorist coming over to hear what I have to say, or if it's new people. I have a tendency to believe it's new people because I've been on like Dave Smith's podcast recently.
Right.
But
that was a good episode, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's another important subject, but
very, very much so. Yes, I agree with you.
But I just don't see if there's no political answer, what do you do? Just keep doing the same thing over and over again, just podcasting and posting memes on the internet. Now you got to start acting, and you really have to try to start influencing people to act. And ever since, I mean, it's only been a few weeks now that I've been talking about, going full blown agorist, or, you can have a full-time job and still be an agorist and make a real difference.
Mm.
But I'm seeing people, really attracted to the message. And I've only had a couple people comment, well, I just don't see how this is going to help. And normally it's people within the LP
Right.
who are like, oh, why are you leaving, kind of thing. And, who wants you to stay around. But I mean, look what's happened with the Libertarian Party recently. You had some Republican judge, um, jump in, and now people are taking him seriously. And then Justin Amash, the guy who sided with the CIA twice in the last 3 years, in the impeachment and in Russiagate, with no evidence whatsoever, he's going to jump in and join the Libertarian Party. I mean, I think I got out right at the perfect time. I mean, there's, as Sting said and wrote in one of the Police songs, there is no political solution. There isn't. And I don't know why it took me this long to figure that out. I mean, I knew it for years, and then I allowed myself to be convinced, oh, well, maybe we can use the LP for good. No. We got to concentrate on doing things outside of the system, and working to make the system as weak as possible. And I think counter economics is the way to do that.
Yeah, and well, one of the podcasts I released here recently. I'm sorry about the noise, man. These puppies are just having a blast, and there's no stopping them. One of the podcasts I released here recently was with John Bush, and he's an agorist as well. And we had talked about the Freedom Cell project as well, and it's one of those things. It's about getting in as many voices, as many different perspectives of the counter economics and that argument as possible, and trying to show that there's a wide variety of ways to use this, because there were so many ways in my past that I had participated in counter economics without even knowing what I was doing. I was just surviving. That was just put into my head. You have to survive, and so there were a lot of ways I participated. And then now I'm looking at a way to make it a lifestyle, to make it the way I make my living, the way I go about my business. And we have some things that we've done over the years, again, without having a label for it, and just making sure that we are okay, my wife and myself. And I agree with you. Like, there was something, I don't know, you had said it, and I've been thinking it. You had said it on one of your podcasts, but there was a paradigm shift when this started. It wasn't like a weekend and I hadn't even really heard about the virus. I didn't even really know what it was. But then I started seeing people on Facebook talk about it, and the way they were talking about it, I was like, this is weird. Like, what's going on here? And then somebody's like, well, I'm surprised you're not keeping up with this. And I was like, well, I didn't think anything of it. It's just, it's SARS. It's just another virus. Like, shit happens, like there are viruses. And when you're in the lab playing with these things, and they end up getting released sometimes, and that's just the way it goes. But then I started paying attention to what people were saying, and I was like, yeah, I don't know, man. This is getting really authoritarian really fast. And it was coming from people I didn't expect to be authoritarian, and that's what got me like kind of backing up away from, oh, there's not going to be a political solution to this. We're not going to fix, we're not going to spread liberty through the same way that we were going to spread it, just a month ago. There's got to be a change of we have to change strategy in a dynamic way in order to match this. And as you brought up, Rahm Emanuel, never let a crisis go to waste. We have to look at it the same way. We can't let this crisis go to waste. And we have to lead by example and show people that there's a way to get away from the politics and away from the government, authoritarianism, the technocracy that's been creeping up on us for so many years, and that we can create our own communities outside of their scope and their vision for what America could be or should be.
Well, I mean, I really think if people look into the history of how counter markets have worked, in Soviet Union, because of inefficiencies, the black market just took over. And if people wanted things, they had to hustle for them and had to rely on ways outside of the system. I've talked about how when I went to Iceland a few years ago, I had dinner with a family there, and I knew that food was insanely expensive and alcohol was even more expensive. And their fridge was filled with food and filled with meat. Meat's really expensive there. The vegetables, not so much, but meat and alcohol are ridiculously expensive. And they told me, they said, "Oh, we don't buy it at the store. A boat comes in and someone buys it, and then it gets redistributed, and we get it." And they use the term black market, and that's the way people survive. And Michael Malice likes to talk about how the black market in North Korea works, and how it's working to take down that system by people sneaking in, like episodes of South Korean soap operas to see how people outside are living. And I mean, imagine if the movie The Interview made it in there, and just how irreverent that is towards their great leader, and people going across the river into China to bring goods back in, and how they will bribe the guards when they're coming back. I mean, we're not at that point here, but I mean, everyone, my favorite gray market activity is like the shade tree mechanic. I don't want to take my car to a shop and pay $90 to $110 an hour labor. I'd rather take it to the guy down the street who fixes it, just says, "All right, I'll do it for this," and then I give him cash, and that's it. Well, or hopefully people start taking cryptocurrency, silver, soon enough. But yeah, I mean, that deprives the system of taxes. And I mean, there's tons of ways that you can do it. I mean, there's tons of farmers markets you can go to that aren't official farmers markets. We have farmers markets here in Atlanta, but they're nothing more than like a gigantic store. It'll say Buford Highway Farmers Market, but you're still paying taxes on things. It's like, I'd rather go to a farmers market at like a church parking lot where you're not, that kind of thing. And
Right.
there's ways that you can. I forget what was there talking about Italy, and how Italy's system was so just destroy, like so many people were working for the government, and they had short days where they would get off at, like, they'd show up to work at 8 and work till 2, and then they'd get off. And then so many people went and started work their under the table job, work their their cash jobs and everything. So I mean, it's really the only, I mean, look at the amount of money they're printing. Look at the amount. I mean, it's that $2 trillion is nothing compared to what's coming. So they're going to need a certain amount to pay the interest on these loans that they're taking. Well, they're getting that interest from tax money. They can't print that. I mean, I guess they could, but I mean, that'd be just awesome, putting debt upon debt upon debt. But the more we starve them, the more it's just going to fail. But the great thing about what Agorist can do is, if we go into that with the mindset that we're doing this so that we can create a free market, a black and gray market right now, but as the white market becomes less powerful and the black and the gray grows, once all that goes away, the black and the gray can take over and be the laissez-faire market. Because honestly, the black and the gray market is the only free market we're ever going to have.
Right.
Right now, it's the only free market we have. And in order to destroy the state, we don't want another state to replace it. We want people to look and go, oh, when I was without, the black and the gray took care of me. That's where I went, so, like people making masks at home on Etsy and, all these ways that, I was talking about 3D printing masks, 3D printing ventilators.
We have a
All this
mutual
stuff is out.
friend. We have a mutual friend that just 3D printed his first mask yesterday.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the possibilities are endless. But if we go into this, the Soviet Union didn't go into this saying that the agorists there weren't like, oh, well, we'll take down the system and then this market will take over and everything. No, they didn't have that. We just know that it works because they were doing it, but they didn't have an end game in mind. They were just trying to survive.
Right.
Here we have an end game in mind.
Right. Yeah. And and that's I think that's where, at least with my mindset and the way that my mind is structured, I guess you could say, is I get really bogged down in philosophy and history. And it's just, I love reading about it and I love learning about it. And then I try to apply, the lessons and this, that, and the other to modern day. And a lot of people don't look at life that way. And they're incapable of drawing those parallels. And by stepping out and kind of changing my approach, I've noticed that what I'm trying to do now is find solutions that every person can grab onto and say, okay, yeah, this is a good way to move forward. This is something I can actually utilize in my daily life. And especially for those people that, are out of work nowadays, because they were mandated basically unemployed. And so this is dire as the times feel. I think there's a real opportunity to attract a lot of people like that by teaching that there are other ways to survive and to maintain your living. And you bring up the shade tree mechanic, and things like that down here are that's pretty common down here where I live, out in the country, out in the middle of nowhere. There's a lot of people working for cash under the table. The guy who delivers my materials for my driveway, my gravel and all that, he works under the table. He doesn't file all that. Well, I don't know how much of it he does file on his taxes, but I know he doesn't file all of it. And I'm always sure to pay him in cash, so he doesn't have to, or the guy that comes around and fixes my tractor. I know he's retired. This is all just extra money in his pocket as far as he's concerned. So there's a lot of that goes on, and people that aren't philosophically, caught up. And it's a matter of finding those people and maybe talking philosophy with them a little bit, but mainly just creating a community with those types of people that are willing to operate in their own best interest outside the system. Because that's, like you said, that's what's going to take them down. They're not getting those interest payments for all this money they're printing, and how long is it going to be before, as I brought up with Mike Meharry, how long is it going to be before countries like China begin dumping the U.S. bonds because the dollar's not worth a fuck?
Yeah. I mean, people like the idea of working to get paid for cash. Now, not everybody can do it. I mean, if you have a mortgage payment and you have kids, things like that, I mean, that's tough, but still, I mean, you could work to make sure that you're not paying one red penny over what you should be paying for in taxes, and then do as much as you can outside of the system. If that, and I think if anything that I could say that this whole COVID thing should teach people, especially with almost 10% of the population unemployed at this point, just in the last month, is you have to develop a side hustle. You have to develop some kind of way to generate income, away from, if you still have a regular job, your regular job, or, I think a lot of people are going into the gig economy right now, or trying to develop, side hustles. And I mean, I've got some things that I'm working on right now, and but I still been doing my agorist thing I never stopped since 2008. But yeah, I mean, I don't see any other way. I mean, it's a proven method, and it is one that really, once you decide to do it, you're free. You will feel, once you decide to embrace it, you will feel the weight come off your shoulders about how am I gonna get through this. And it's exciting, man. Once you read the Konkin's 2 books, Agorist Primer and New Libertarian Manifesto, it really opens your eyes to what can be done, what must be done. That was the title of my last episode with Vin Armani, was What Must Be Done. And I stole that. It's from a Hoppe speech from 1997, Hans Hermann Hoppe speech.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about, he actually mentions in there, getting things down to as small as possible, and getting political locally. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Hoppe, but I just don't see that as being, in this age of coronavirus and what's going to happen going forward, I don't see that being a rational strategy. And I think that stuff that Vin Armani's talking about, what Sal's talking about, what I'm, really trying to educate from picking things from different sources and having a couple ideas of my own, I think it's the only way to go forward. I really think it's the only way that people are going to feel free, because what are they talking about? We're going to have food shortages. We're going to have meat shortages. We're going to, when was the last time people saw toilet paper on the shelf? A lot of people haven't seen it on the shelf in a long time. And I mean, somebody's going to have to step in and provide that. Or, say you have to have vaccination records to fly.
Right.
Well, if you don't want to get this vaccine, which they're rushing. So, I mean, if they were rushing to design a car, or if they were rushing to design a new plane, I'd be like, I'm not flying on that.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. That's going to need more time. I mean, there are people who are going to be like, okay, I need a counterfeit vaccine thing, or I need, some way to whatever app they want you to keep on your phone to show that you're vaccinated. We're going to need people who are able to produce those for people who want to travel and don't want to take some vaccine. So, I mean, there are a lot of possibilities, and I mean, this is why the change is, I just see authoritarianism. I mean, this makes what happened after 9/11 look just tame.
Right.
This is, I mean, the whole thing, more than agorism, I wish I could convince people that, yeah, this has changed us forever, and that it's not for the best.
Right. I remember you had done a podcast. I think it was right after Trump was elected, and you were talking about the wall. I want to say you were talking to Dave Smith about it, and you had said that if they actually accomplish building this wall, what do you think is going to happen if there's another 9/11? That wall is going to be used to keep you in. And looking back at that comment, I just kind of like, yeah, well, little did we know that it was going to be 10 times worse than 9/11. So, at least the reaction, the way that they reacted.
Well, what's funny about that is that was in January.
Was it? I thought it was a long time ago. I thought it was like right after Trump was elected.
That was January 3rd. That was Friday, January 3rd.
No, Jesus.
Of this year.
Hey.
That I said that. And then I remember, then I had forgotten I had said that. And then a listener was like, I forget who said it, but someone's like, do you remember you asked in January, you asked Dave what it would be like if another 9/11 happened tomorrow? And I said, yeah. And I couldn't have imagined anything worse than what's happening right now.
Yeah.
This is a lot worse than what I had imagined would happen.
I've been thinking about you saying that quite a bit.
They didn't even have to. They didn't even have to build a wall.
Yeah.
The wall's imaginary at this point. I mean, no one wants, who wants to, what are you going to fly to have vacation in France? What are you going to visit? What are you going to do when you're there?
Mm.
They've basically shut the world down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy.
No,
I mean, this is beyond anything Orwell could have ever imagined. You know, it's like you look at it and you're just like, this is nuts. This is like living in a movie. This is incredibly insane.
I know it's been a meme, but COVID-19 84 really is really is perfect.
Yeah,
really is perfect for this. But I was talking to, like I said, Vin Armani. He moved. He left, and I know where he doesn't want to announce where he went. It'll be, and I'm not allowed to say, but it'll be clear soon. Mm-hmm. People will know where he is, but it's someplace that I've been looking at for about 6 months. Not, I'm going to move there, but this is a possibility. Let me check this out a little bit more. And then he told me that he was on the last plane in. So like he and his family got there and then they shut down flights in.
Oh, Jesus.
So, think about it. Now you're talking about that wall. You're talking about, what would happen if there's another 9/11.
Yeah.
And a wall's gone up. I think, who is it? Whoever, I was talking to Salerno earlier today, and he was saying that people are flying and they're saying there's like 7 people on a plane.
Wow.
It makes social distancing easy. Yeah. Of course, social distancing inside a tube is, is interesting, but
True. But yeah, I mean, it really solidified it. I mean, I didn't leave the country or anything, but it did solidify my thought process when I left Houston and I moved out here, out in the middle of nowhere. And I look around and, like you were talking about the food shortages and this, that, and the other. I was like, I'm glad I did. I'm glad I made the choice I did. I mean,
man, you made a good choice.
We have a stocked pond. We have land, and we're just kind of like, all right, I have ammunition. There's a gun shop down the street that always has 30 ammunition. If I need to go hunting, I can always go hunting. So it's like, all right, we're good. The worst part for me is, still being a truck driver, and you're talking about whether or not they're going to force vaccines onto people that want to fly and people that want to travel. I'm wondering if they're going to do the same thing to us, because I was just told, I'm due up for a medical examination. We have to get a medical examination every 2 years. And mine is coming up. Actually, I'm supposed to go get it done next week. And they're going to make me take a test for the coronavirus, for COVID-19. And they're forcing those tests on us during these medical examinations. And I'm like, all right, whatever, I'll probably, whatever. I know I don't have it. I haven't felt sick. And I think I had it like you. I think I had it already because I had gotten sick for the first time in 15 years and it laid me up for about 5 days. And then I was fine after that. But yeah, so I'm like, are they going to try to force us into vaccines, to continue driving? And if that's something I was going to say,
considering you travel so much, I mean,
yeah, it's possible. And that's the thing. And, I was just thinking, if that's something they do, they're going to be out at least one driver, because I'm not doing that. They're talking about putting microchips in this crap. They're talking about putting this in there and that in there, and the last time I got any vaccines was when I joined the military. and I got sick as a dog while I was in basic training. Ended up coming down with pneumonia. So I'm just not doing I don't do the vaccine thing.
Yeah, man. It is a different world. And the sooner people figure that out, you were talking earlier about how you went on Facebook and you went on social media, and that's how you found out about this. The amount, whenever something like this happens, and I'm talking about not only this, but whenever something is out in the zeitgeist, and you start seeing libertarians, people who call themselves libertarians, comment on it, it is truly amazing to me how many of them will just take it as gospel, the word of someone wearing a lab coat. And what I know is that a lot of these researchers and a lot of these experts, well, they're living off of public money. So it's incumbent upon them what are they going to do? They're going to go against the grain. I mean, think about all the climate change scientists. Why would they go against the grain? Isn't that going to cut off their funding? And if the government has decided the narrative, and they're paying these people to perpetuate the narrative and come up with evidence for it.
Right.
I don't I see, like if you share the video of Dr. Erickson, the two doctors, the one in California in Bakersfield, who are questioning all of this. Well, if you share that on social media, you will have ANCAPs, you will have anarchists and libertarians come in sharing mainstream government science to debunk it. And science there had quotes around it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so you don't trust the experts when they say we need to bomb Iran, but you do trust them when it comes to science because they're wearing a coat.
Yeah.
They have a fancy degree. Sorry. Maybe it's not good. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm not smart for doing it. I don't trust anything that's coming across the press. I just don't. I question it all.
Yeah.
And especially if they're getting their money from, their salary is being paid for by stolen money. I'm sorry. I just don't trust them. And if that makes me a science denier or I want grandma to die or whatever, so be it. I don't care. I don't trust anything the government says. I mean, that's, straight out of George Carlin.
Yeah.
Or Nietzsche.
Yeah. Well, and I had talked to that Dr. James Lyons Weiler a while back, and he was talking about and it was an article that he had written on LinkedIn that I had read, and he talks about how the CDC conflates the flu deaths and the pneumonia deaths and puts them together to boost the amount of deaths for flu deaths beyond epidemic status so that they can push these vaccines on people, because they're being paid by the pharmaceutical companies, so they're all in bed. The CDC is all in bed with the pharmaceutical companies. The pharmaceutical companies wants to sell these vaccines. So they've convinced the CDC since 2014, what they've been doing is they've been adding the flu deaths and the pneumonia deaths together to create one number, and they call it flu disease deaths. And then they use that to move the flu deaths up to epidemic status. So if they're doing that with the flu and pneumonia, which have been around for a long fucking time, these aren't new. And so they've been around forever, and people are believing these stats of 50,000 plus and 60,000 plus that are coming out every year. What makes you think that they're not conflating a bunch of these COVID numbers? And we've been seeing that, where they're just, well, we assume that they had, the similar type what do you call it, symptoms as COVID would cause. So that we're going to put that under COVID. Well, wait, we don't know. You're not testing them. You're not even, you're not doing any kind of autopsy or anything on these people after the fact. We're just supposed to believe you. We don't even know. We don't know if COVID like intensified a previous condition and they died of the previous condition that was already killing them, or if the COVID was actually what killed them. You know what I'm saying? And so like we're just kind of like, okay, whatever. And then people are like, well, we'll know in 18 months. Well, can you imagine what this country's going to look like in 18 months if this continues? Like, that's fucking insane to expect to wait that long.
Yeah, I mean, I guarantee you what we're recording this on April 28th, 29th or something like that, 2020. Yep. I mean, do you really think six months from now it's going to be any different? They say that this will disappear when the weather gets hot. Who knows if that's true or not? Maybe it will. Right. But from everything they're saying, once it gets cold again, just right back in. It'll be right back. And what are they going to do? They're going to lock people up again for 2-3 months? I mean, we already know that UBI is coming and Medicare for all, universal health care is coming.
Right.
That's a given. But it's like I was talking with Dave Smith. I think he said the last time we recorded, or 2 times ago or something like that, said, and that's the least of our worries.
Yeah, no shit.
And it's like, and I understand economics. I understand what UBI is going to do. I understand what universal health care is going to do. I'm more worried about this security state. I mean, and we already have a security state. We had it before all this. Mm-hmm. Now it's just magnified. Now it's just, I mean, by 100 times.
Well, and what are, here's what I'm thinking as well. It's like, are they going to start moving, military personnel from active duty to into policing? Like, what are they going to do to conduct this? Because I still say that there's going to come a tipping point where there's going to be a majority of Americans that are just sick and tired of this and say, look, man, we've been starving. Y'all devastated our businesses. We're going back to work with or without your approval. And so what are they going to do when it comes to that point? Because people don't want to be locked up in their homes. I mean, some people do, obviously, but the majority of people want to be out there making their businesses operate, providing for their family and doing their things. And so how are they going to step in? And are they going to declare martial law nationwide? I mean, how are they going to do this? Greg Abbott has already started talking about trying to open things up here in Texas. And that's fine. That's great. I'm glad he is doing that. But I really think we're going to come to a point where more people are just going to say, I don't care if you're opening it up. We're just going to go do what we do. And y'all are going to have to do what you do. Like that hairdresser in Dallas that just decided, okay, I'm just going to open my shop back up because I can't continue this. And I'm going to separate the chairs 8 feet apart. And I'm only going to allow, 3 customers in my shop at a time. And the other people have to wait in their cars, and we'll call them or give them a buzzer or something. And, kind of like when you're at a restaurant, you're sitting on the patio waiting for a table to open up. And we're going to operate, and we're going to figure out how to operate in this atmosphere and still do the social distancing and this, that, and the other. And I think you're going to see more people starting to do that.
Well, I hope so, but all they have to do is, the curve is back, and then you're going to have the Karens going crazy. And, you got to remember, these politicians want to get reelected. If enough Karens get loud enough, and the Karens are the ones that vote, they'll crack down on it. I mean, this is what's happening right now, this shutdown. And I think Georgia was the first state to reopen last Friday, and it really hasn't reopened. So don't believe the hype. Most businesses are office work is still not happening.
Right.
But I think New York is saying they're shut down until May 15th. Who knows? Considering that they seem to be the epicenter of all this, allegedly. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the numbers are there. I see CNN saying that people that are dying, they're just calling it COVID-19 because they have symptoms. So, I mean, I don't know what's going on, but Virginia was talking about till June 10th. I mean,
Jesus.
man, I don't know. I don't know how we go beyond this. I don't see. I think the loudmouths, especially, and then we haven't even talked about the fact that the people that are just using this to play politics, the whole left right thing, how it seems like everybody who's like, you need to stay inside, you're killing me, how most of them are Democrats on the left, and how it's more people on the right who seem to want things to open back up. Although I thought it was funny that here in Georgia, when they shut everything down, there was no. We have a Republican governor, and there was no right-wing march on the Capitol saying open things back up. But in the states where the there's left Democrat governors, they get the marches and everything. So I guess
Right.
it depends on what letters in front of the governor's name. But
Well, and it obviously shows
I
that
just don't see it, man.
it shows too that it's obviously not grassroots. This is coordinated, from these think tanks and this, that, and the other. Like and that was what I said when all these protests started. I'm like, why don't you just do what you want to do? Like, instead of asking them for permission, why don't you just go do what you want to do? Go open your shops back up and go back to work. Just at least then you're not stacked up on top of each other and you're actually earning a living. No, your whole idea of civil disobedience is begging these authoritarians for permission. No, just go do what you want to do. Like, screw them. What are they going to do? Go around the whole town and arrest everybody?
Well, I mean, that you'd have to take into consideration that everybody who's marching is a business owner. A lot of those people are employees, and maybe their employers aren't willing to open up.
Yeah, well,
So
protest the employer.
Also, making the claim that these, I mean, and they very well might be, these protests may be AstroTurf, being funded by somebody else, but the right makes the same claim about anytime the left protests. Oh, that's George Soros is paying those people to be out there. So then you really have to ask yourself, is anybody really protesting? The only real way, and you've already said this, the only real way to protest is to go do the thing that you're being stopped from doing.
Right.
So it's like it's like, oh, we're going to march on the Capitol for gun rights. Yeah, they did that in Virginia, and they still passed the same laws the next day. So
exactly,
that was useless.
Yeah, it's like, whatever, man.
The only way to do it is to just ignore what they're saying and just go about your life. But in this situation, I mean, most people aren't business owners, so they're employees. So if their employers are shutting down, then they really don't. They don't. What can they do? I mean, like, they can protest the employer, sure, but I mean, that's not going to help.
Yeah,
I mean, they can call the employer. I mean, they could contact the employer and say, "Hey, look, if you want to open up, we'll be there."
Right.
But the employer also knows that they signed the contract with the state.
Yeah.
It's called a corporation or a business license, and what comes along with that? Rules and regulations. So no, they could have their license pulled, and so.
No, you're right. You're right. One of the reasons
I hate corporations is because they're formed so that you can have liability from consequences of things that you do, which basically means that they're a mirror of the state.
Right.
They want to become just like the state. And, so if something goes wrong, I have protection. So, it's just like the state. When they do something wrong, oh, well, we're the state. We can do whatever the hell we want.
Yeah. 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 Well, you're right. And I just find it really frustrating. I just get really like, man, y'all are just, you're asking permission. Like, just go do it. Just go, like do whatever you want to do. Because what are they going to do?
Way.
What are they going to do? And that's kind of always been my mindset. If everybody just quit paying taxes, what are they going to do?
Oh yeah, I've been saying that for 12 years. I've been saying that since 1 week after I became a libertarian.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's like whatever, man. What are they going to do?
Well, I got to run.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a great hour though, man. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, man. No, this was a good talk. It really gives me a chance to get some things off my chest.
All right, man. And whenever you get a chance, just send me those links.
Oh yeah, anything you want to link to? Sure. Yeah, not a problem at all, man.
Well, and those PDFs you had told me about, I'll make sure.
Oh yeah. I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you as soon as we stop recording.
All right, brother. Well, you have a good one, man. We'll get off now.
All right, you take care of yourself. All right.
All right, later, man.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries, man.
That was Pete Quinones. I am Tommy Salmons. Late.